Hey YouTube, present day Volt here. I wanted to give a little preface to this video before getting started. This video is almost a year old. I did all of the recording and like 80% of the editing in between finishing my internship and actually graduating college. And between all of that and moving back home, it kind of just got tossed to the wayside. And I sort of forgot about it until recently. And I figured what better time to upload it than now that the Assassin's Creed 4 remake is right on the horizon. Yeah, was my journey 100%ing Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Just the main story. Yeah, let's get into it. First, I wanted to complete the Templar hunts for the drip. I only had 2 left to do, so I did the one in Havana first, and while I was there, I also grabbed all the collectibles. While I'm doing that, I'll give a rundown of Black Flag's story for anyone who hasn't played it in the last 10 years it's been out, like me. In Assassin's Creed 4, you play as Edward Kenway, a privateer turned pirate turned assassin. The game opens with the ship you're on being locked in combat with the ship of an assassin named Duncan Walpole. After both ships end up sinking and you end up marooned on an island with Walpole, Edward chases him through the island, eventually killing him, stealing his outfit, and assuming his identity. After reading a letter stolen from Duncan Walpole's body, you learn that he was expected to meet the governor of Havana. And so, after saving a merchant named Stead Bonnet, you two commandeer a ship and sail to Havana. In Havana, Edward, posing as Duncan, meets with the governor, who's actually a high-ranking Templar. At this meeting, the Templars discuss the Observatory, a station which can monitor anyone, anywhere in the world, as long as it has a blood sample. However, the Observatory can only be accessed by someone named the Sage. At this meeting, Edward also accidentally sells the Templars maps to various assassin covens throughout the Caribbean. Edward is eventually discovered trying to free the Sage and is locked up on a ship part of a Spanish treasure fleet. After breaking free, Edward commandeers a brig from the fleet and is able to escape with a small crew of pirates, including Adewale, a former slave who is locked up on the same ship as Edward. Using the brig, the two of them sail to Nassau. At Nassau, Edward meets up with his pirate besties, Benjamin Hornigold, Mary Reed, who's under the alias of James Kidd, Charles Vane, and Blackbeard, or Edward Thatch. While tracking down a galleon to use for the defense of Nassau's port, Edward and James Kidd discover a small hidden cove at Great Inagua with a Templar mansion as well. Edward also kills one of the Templars who is present at his meeting in Havana here. In the Templar mansion, him and James Kidd discover maps to the assassin hideouts which he had sold to the Templars. Edward then goes to Tulum, finding a settlement of assassins and meeting up with James outside of an ancient temple. Here James tells Edward about the Order of Assassins, the Sage, and the Observatory. After finding a statue of the Sage's face deep within the temple, they return to the surface to discover that the village of assassins is under attack by Templars. Edward helps them repel the Templars, and then sets to work locating the Sage for himself. After capturing the governor from a naval fort, Edward tries to use him as bait to lure out the slaver who's been transporting the Sage. The plan doesn't work, however, and Edward has to kill the slaver, but the Sage still gets away. Back in Nassau, sickness and disease have taken hold, and the pirates need to find medicines to cure the population. Blackbeard ends up laying siege to Charlestown, holding hostages, hoping to exchange them for medicine. Woodes Rogers, another Templar from the meeting in Havana, pulls into Nassau's port and blockades it, offering a pardon for all pirates who come with him. Edward and a couple other pirates load up a ship with gunpowder and blast a hole through the blockade, escaping Nassau. After receiving a tip that the Sage commonly sails aboard a ship named the Princess, Edward and Charles Vane go searching for him. After finally locating the Sage, Edward earns his trust by killing 2 Templars who attacked his crew. Edward and the Sage, who he now knows named Bartholomew Roberts, make their way to the observatory. Roberts is able to open the observatory and shows its power to Edward, using blood vials collected by the Templars. Roberts, however, betrays Edward and turns him in to be put into prison. After almost a year of imprisonment, Edward is freed from his cage by the head assassin of Mary's chapter. After escaping prison, Edward returns to the assassins on Tulum, and in an effort to make amends for selling the maps of the assassin chapters to the Templars, Edward hunts down Woodes Rogers and Governor Torres, while also taking out Bartholomew Roberts, thus securing the observatory from anyone abusing its power. The last Templar hunt led me to the island of Cayman Sound, where I participated in a totally sustainable and absolutely eco-friendly hunting contest, which definitely didn't ravage the ecosystem of this small island. Then I had to locate Alvin. I personally think the tailing and eavesdropping missions are pretty fun. I think they really make you feel like an assassin, leaping from rooftops to track your target. I know Ubisoft games in general have a problem with repetitive missions and objectives, but I don't know, I thought it was fun here. This Templar hunt and Black Flag as a whole made me think about the idea that games are going woke nowadays. Opia, this assassin that we're helping in this Templar hunt, is a native whose island and village were attacked and destroyed by Templars seeking to colonize and convert her island into a commercial hub. This entire hunt is about seeking revenge against the Templars for destroying her way of life. There's a moment in the main story, right after you escape from the treasure fleet, where Edward tells Adewale he's going to name the ship the Jackdaw, and Adewale is a bit hurt by Edward assuming it would be his ship to name.
I've made my choice, Ade. I'm calling her the Jackdaw. A sly bird I loved as a child back in Swansea.
A dark little creature, no?
Did it rub you wrong when I took this brig as mine own?
It was the sort of rub I have learned to endure, sailing among faces of such fairness.
Edward acknowledges that most of the crew wouldn't accept Adewale as captain because of his skin color, and, for lack of a better term, compensates him by appointing him as quartermaster, which on pirate ships back in the day was second in command. It's still not totally fair for Adewale, but the fact that Edward not only acknowledged the unfairness to Ade, and also basically gave him the highest position he could think of is pretty progressive, given that this takes place in the 1700s Caribbean, where the slave trade was still going strong. I mean, Edward's two closest allies are a former slave and a cross-dresser. Is that not woke? And I'm using woke sarcastically here. Calling things woke unironically is literally a dog whistle. Even the Order of Assassins and the Order of Templars as a whole. The assassins, who are basically always portrayed as the objective good guys, are freedom fighters. The Templars, who are basically always the bad guys, are seeking world order and authoritarian control. And Black Flag, which obviously isn't even the oldest Assassin's Creed game, came out in 2014. That was 11 years ago. So this idea that games are only just now becoming woke because Starfield lets you choose your pronouns, or Oblivion's body types are categorized as Type 1 and Type 2 in the remake instead of female and male, or that Assassin's Creed Shadows, which just came out, lets you play as either a black samurai, who was a real person by the way, or a woman, is just stupid. It's just trendy to call things woke, and the people who find issue with things like this, who call it woke, always throw the loudest tantrums. But that's besides the point. After chasing down Vilcus from the companions, we boarded his ship and discovered he was cannon-proof, and found the location of our final target. None of the guards here cared about this gunshot, followed immediately by the powder kegs that they're standing by exploding. I got to play some tag, and got the last key, and then made my way back to the hideout to open up the Templar outfit. Honestly, it's pretty cool. I like the black and red, but the big stupid scarf kinda kills it for me. It makes Edward look all snuggly and cozy. I don't know, it doesn't have the scarf in the cage on the skeleton. Without the scarf, and maybe without the white Templar sash, it would be a really good piratey outfit with the black and red. I did read a comment saying that the reason it has a big scarf is that it's supposed to be hidden blade proof, which I think is kind of fun, but I don't know, it still looks stupid. I ended up using the Mayan outfit for basically the rest of the story after you're able to unlock it. You might see me using it in some footage here. I also really liked the Hatham Kenway's overcoat outfit because I think it's just a better color variation of the default outfit. I like the blue hood and the blue sleeves. Comment down below which outfit, swords, and pistols are your favorite from Black Flag. With the Templar hunts finished, I began to clear the taverns and complete the assassination contracts, which I had, for the most part, ignored up until this point. I always find it funny when Edward is in a tavern brawl where he's just beating up some jerks who picked a fight with him, and he randomly just twists one of their heads around 180 degrees and snaps their neck. Anyway, there's a lot of these assassin contracts, and there's not much to say about them, so. One of Kingston's contracts took me to a smuggler's den, which I cleared while I was there. I was saving the buried treasure maps for later, which perhaps I shouldn't have done, because having to swim back through some of these caves wasn't hard, but certainly annoying. The blowpipe is the best weapon in the game, other than smoke bombs. The second contract from Grand Cayman was in another smuggler's den, which I had to swim through this abandoned mineshaft with this horror movie villain of a shark to get through. Gave me serious Depth vibes. Does anyone remember Depth? Asymmetrical PvP shark game. Spent longer than I'd like to admit looking for a way to get the last Animus fragment here. I took a small break from the assassin contracts to visit the islands from the extra content packs and grabbed all the gear there, although I don't think anything on these islands count towards progression, so. There was one assassin contract where the target was actually on a ship, which I thought was pretty cool. Most of the time they're just some guy standing around. There's one that was in a fort that I had already taken, which I thought was kind of funny. After wrapping those up, I claimed my reward, the pistol swords. They're pretty cool. They have a couple unique finishers where you stick the blades into an enemy and shoot them. But other than that, they aren't particularly special. I still found myself using the pirate scimitars most of the time. Afterwards, I went to Florida and grabbed everything there. I then decided to go hunting to craft the rest of the upgrades for Edward. I'm not sure why, but I found the hammerhead sharks to be the hardest things to hunt by far. I think it's just a combination of how they moved and the shape of their body. For whatever reason, I just had a hard time aiming precisely. Thankfully, I only needed to hunt 2 of them, and none of the other guys gave me that much difficulty. Fun fact, of the 3 shark species in game, only bull sharks are typically aggressive to humans, which, if I had to guess, is why it's always bull sharks in the shipwreck. That, or that they're pretty small. No, that's not to say you should go up and pet any hammerhead or great white shark you encounter. Great whites still have an estimated bite force of 4,000 psi, which is twice that of some of the biggest land animals I could think of. Anyway, before hunting any great whites or orcas, I arbitrarily decided I wanted to fully upgrade my ship because I didn't have the elite harpoons yet, which meant I needed to go deep sea diving to get the upgrade plans first. So that's what I did. At the Devil's Eye Caverns, I saw the sperm whale in the background. That was cute. There's this one Animus fragment behind this wall when you get into the first current area, which I totally missed in my first swim through, but you just have to power out of the current a little bit further ahead to collect it and then go back through the cave as normal. The blue hole was the last wreck I had to explore. I didn't like this one. This one gave me the heebie-jeebies. It shivered my timbers. It made my blue hole clench. I always wondered how Edward can keep his eyes open underwater when he's at sea. If you've ever been to any body of salt water, it sucks to get in your eyes. It tastes gross. Not to mention the pressure he'd be under even at these relatively shallow depths. Moray eels, for those keeping track, also aren't typically aggressive to humans, but they have poor eyesight and can be known to lash out if they think there's food in it for them. So I guess watch your fingers and toes. And that's all the shipwreck's done. For the rest of the upgrade plans, I need to find the buried treasure chest. Now, there are 22 buried chests in Black Flag, and the maps to 19 of them can be found as secrets scattered throughout the islands in the Caribbean. Most of the maps give you a pretty good general location for the chests, and because I'm so smart and intelligent, I was able to find them no problem. One of the chests contained Edward's unique swords, which are the swords Edward sometimes has on some of the games. I think they look cool, but I never used them. Now, here's where things got a little bit complicated. The last 3 maps are acquired from Kenway's Fleet, a feature which you unlock early in the game after acquiring the Jackdaw. It's basically just a source of passive income. It lets you capture ships that you board and send them on trading missions, which complete in the background. For whatever reason though, Kenway's Fleet doesn't work on the current patch of Black Flag. You can unlock it and progress past the mission, but you can't actually use it as it just loads infinitely when you try to access it in the captain's quarters. But Volt, I hear you ask. How will you 100% the main story of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag now? Fear not, my witless audience, for Ninowen from the Nexus has us covered. Ninowen here has provided a download for an older exe file of Black Flag, which, when installed and used to replace the current exe version, allows us to use Kenway's Fleet. So now, I have to steamroll through Kenway's fleet, which I could have been doing the whole time as I was progressing throughout the story, to unlock the last 3 treasure chests. The best way I found to do this, with a little looking around online, was to stay at max wanted level. As I mentioned before, Kenway's fleet allows you to capture ships you've boarded and send them to your fleet instead of sinking them and just taking their goods. Different ships have different levels and stats, which you can see using the spyglass and are determined by what kind of ship it is and where on the map it is. The easiest way I found was just to get to the max wanted level and capture the pirate ships that spawn whenever you fast travel. Just pick a random area, I fast travel to a captured fort, and sail a little bit away until you see the ship spawn. Because I was at a captured fort, the fort helps fight them, and you can really easily capture them and bring them to your fleet. Smaller ships are faster, but they also have much less health, damage, and cargo capacity. So in general, the mana wars are better, but it's still worth it to have some smaller ships. In the end, I had 2 schooners, a brig, 4 frigates, and the rest were mana wars. Kenway's fleet uses its own set of resources to trade, which you acquire by doing battles on the trade routes to reduce the danger level, which makes it so smaller ships can more easily complete missions from that route. This is why it's good to have a lot of mana wars, as they pretty much trivialize any and all combat. I guess you could say Kenway's fleet is kinda like Pokemon, but without the nuance, type advantages, fun creatures, gameplay. Anyway, this alone probably took me about a week. A lot of the later missions not only have super high cargo requirements such that only the slow mana wars can take them on, but they also take super long to complete, 18 hours minimum. The very last mission I completed took 32 hours. Thankfully, the missions progress even when the game is closed thanks to Uplay's online connection. With Kenway's fleet cooking, I purchased the rest of the Jackdaw upgrades and went to hunt down the rest of the achievements. I hunted the Great Whites and Orcas I needed, collected the rest of the Uncharted, Animus fragments, and chests that I didn't get throughout the story. I tracked down my last hunting target, the Red Howler Monkey. With the unlucky monkey shot and skinned, I was able to craft the rest of the craftable upgrades. I went back to the Great Inagua Cove and bought the rest of the upgrades for it. There's this assassin walking around. I followed her for a bit, but I didn't think there's any point to it. Then I went to hunt for the social chests. Black Flag has these special online discoveries that'll spawn every so often, and when you find them, it'll place them in the maps of any friends that you currently have playing Black Flag. These social chests are one of those discoveries, and they spawn at set locations on the map, but randomly. From what I could tell, there isn't really any rhyme or reason to getting the chests to spawn. You just have to know where they can spawn and fast travel around and hope they'll be there when you check. I was lucky to find one when I was going around during the story. My second chest I found at this spot on Havana, and then the third one I found here in Kingston. I then checked and noticed I was missing a single optional objective from the main story. I've been really sure to complete all other optionals, so I'm not sure how this slipped through, but regardless, it was a super easy one. To celebrate, I stopped by the tavern for a responsible drink. Let's check on Kenway's fleet while we're here. Nice. All done with that. Let's get the last 3 buried treasures then. One of those buried chests contained the final upgrade plane needed for the Jackdaw. With the ship now fully upgraded, I was ready for Black Flag's final challenge, taking on the legendary ships. There are 4 legendary ships, each one of them at the corner of the map. I don't know when you're intended to fight them on, probably not last thing, but even with all the ship upgrades, they're pretty challenging for a god gamer like me. I started with El Impoluto at the northwestern corner.
What's he doing? He's coming straight at us! Awaiting order!
A Spanish mana war with a ram on the front. It was basically just a faster than normal mana war with more health. The ram didn't even seem to do that much more damage than normal, and despite the close finish, I didn't find it very hard and I got it on the first try. After forgetting to collect the reals, I sailed to the northeast corner to face the next legendary ship. Or legendary ships, I guess. a duo of British man-o-wars named the Royal Sovereign and the HMS Fearless. This was by far the hardest legendary ship for me. At the beginning of the fight, the two ships will sail on either side of you and broadside you from both sides. After this initial pass, they'll circle you and fire on you from afar, sometimes performing coordinated strikes again. If you try to pass in front of one of them, they will go for a ram as well. After sinking one of them, the remaining ship will enter at Phase 2. The ship lights itself on fire and goes for a ram. Once it lights itself on fire, it will almost instantly beeline for you at max speed. This is where it got a little bit frustrating for me. The high speed and maneuverability of the remaining ship, gained in Phase 2, made it impossible for me to avoid the ram, which dealt huge damage and basically guaranteed that if the ram didn't kill me, a single follow-up shot would. And even if the ram did initially miss, it could easily just swing 90 degrees and land literally on top of the jackdaw. It took me 8 tries, but I finally got the strat down. You need to get close enough to one that you can land a volley of chain shot to slow them down. If you keep hammering them with chain shot, you can actually lock them in place. And once you get them stuck, just ram them in the back of their ship and stick to them, constantly hitting them with chain shot to prevent them from getting too far ahead. Do that until they're super low, and then just repeat the strat on the other one. Once you finish off the second ship, the first one will enter Phase 2, but it should be low enough that you can finish it off before it rams you. The third legendary ship I faced was the Spanish La Dama Negra. She's covered on her broadsides with heavy armor, which means you can't deal damage there. However, mortars, rams, and attacks to her front and back will still work. It's also equipped with some kind of special mortar which doesn't show its area of effect, but that didn't make it much harder. It was terribly inaccurate with its broadsides in my experience. Even when barely avoiding its mortars, I was able to outdamage it. The final legendary ship was the southeastern one, the HMS Prince.
Hey, what's that in the fog? It looks like a ship. Looks like a ghost ship. Aye, risen from the dead to sink us.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really sure what was special about this one other than its appearance. It had standard weaponry, it didn't really maneuver in any special way from what I could tell. My screen kept flashing with these bright flashes even during the first phase when it wasn't storming. The wiki says it's supposed to try to keep itself concealed within the fog while using its mortars, but it just didn't whenever I fought it. It was definitely the easiest of the bunch. With the legendary ship sunk, I unlocked the charge attack, an ability to ram an enemy with increased speed and strength. I thought the legendary ships were pretty fun. Other than some minor frustrations with the duo, I thought it was really cool that you could tell, for the most part, that each ship had its own special strategy that it would employ. And especially with the duo, learning how to counter it felt very rewarding. Anyway, that's it. That's the final achievement for Black Flag's main story. Oh. Wait a minute, there's an achievement for the real life part of the game too. Hey guys, present day Volt is back again. I'm just gonna give some of my thoughts about the story in the game before ending off the video. I think the story had, a little bit of trouble juggling the pirate half involving Blackbeard and Nassau with the Assassins and Templars story. It was very sequential, where 1 year in the timeline was with Blackbeard and Nassau, and the next year was about the Assassins and Templars. The two stories, I don't know that they had much overlap, so I don't think they meshed very well. That contributed to a sort of choppily paced experience of the narrative. It had weird kind of pacing. There's sort of hints at Edward going on this character arc and gaining in conscience, like when he agrees to help the assassins after the initial attack on Tulum. But he only really agrees to that because Mary guilt trips him into it because he sold the maps to all their hideouts. And he still stays his selfish and money-driven self until like 80% through the story when Mary dies. Sort of related to this, I don't think there's really enough emphasis on how long Edward is away at sea. In an early flashback, he tells his wife Caroline that he'd only be away for a year or two at most. Obviously, he's away for much longer. We sometimes see him reading a letter and writing one to send to Caroline at the beginning of each new chapter. And he mentions Caroline to Mary once, but other than that, there isn't much attention brought to it. I think it would have added a lot more depth to Edward's character. He does have greater commitments than rum and plunder, but the game sort of forgets about that. I feel like it's implied that in the end, he's really just interested in his great fortune for himself, but even then, it seems odd that it wouldn't put any focus on him turning away from his dream of building a fortune for him and his wife. That seems like a significant shift in character, considering how important the memories seen in his flashbacks seem to be. More of a gameplay thing, but I wish they gave us the rope darts a lot sooner. They're a really cool item, but I never really found myself using them, as by the time you get them in the story, I'd already become comfortable with the combat gameplay. I don't have many comments to say about the real world story. I haven't played any of the Assassin's Creed games that came before this one, so I don't want to talk bad about something that I'm likely missing all context for. I'll just say I wasn't that interested. Having only played Assassin's Creed Origins before this, I really enjoyed the combat. The fact that this game isn't trying to be an Assassin's Creed game and an RPG, and that I didn't have to consider loot and weapons with slight numerical advantages to others. I basically just used what weapons I thought I looked cool. The weapons do have different stats, but I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really notice much of a difference and just used the officers' rapiers and pirate scimitars most of the time. The only weapons whose higher stats seemed to matter was the pistols, as only the golden flintlocks could one-tap heavy enemies. I would have enjoyed more weapon options other than the hidden blades and swords without having to pick one up from a fallen enemy. The combat system itself is really simple, but I think it feels pretty good when you get good at it. It really allows you to feel like an action hero, fending off enemy soldiers even when you're massively outnumbered. I can only praise the ship-to-ship combat. I love that positioning really does matter, as your 4 weapons don't deal much damage but slow targets down, so it can set you up for a ram or you can get in close for a broadside. I really just love Adewale as a character, and I think Anne Bonny is kind of an idiot. I don't know, they don't really give her any time to do anything cool or smart in the story, so she's kind of just like a bum. And when she replaced Adewale, I think the ship was worse for it. I think the Jackdaw was worse for it. Finally, I think it would have been cool for some more ship boarding objectives, perhaps requiring you to go below the deck of the ship or go into the captain's quarters and steal something. That's gonna do it for today. I do have the DLCs for Black Flag, so if you guys liked this video, I can proceed with doing similar ones for the DLCs. I've actually already 100%ed Freedom Cry, and I'd still have to play Avalon, so if you want to see that, let me know. I do have another video that I was already working on before I remembered about this one, about Predator Badlands. But I'm still working on getting like B-roll footage for that and trying to find a way to get some clips from the movie. so look out for that. Let me know what you guys think. I've been sort of through my last like 4 videos dabbling with different ways to have my avatar on screen as the Volt Warframe. I've been trying to dabble with, you know, I think they call them PNG tubers nowadays, where you just have the pictures of the character and you have a couple different poses for him. You know, I think that would maybe be a little bit more dynamic than what I have now, where it's just a loop recording from Warframe. But if you have any thoughts about that, let me know, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you later.